Hello, thank you for taking a moment to watch this video, and on this particular training I want to talk to you about launching a dial session from a custom object that is part of a managed package. So if you've installed a managed package that was created by someone else that obviously includes additional custom objects in your Salesforce org, you may find yourself wanting to initiate a dial session from that specific object. Now this particular training, I'm going to focus on being able to select records from that object and call a contact that is related to the records on this object. So here you can see this is the record and it's related to a contact. In this particular case, I've got this object called vendors. So I might have vendors that are linked to contacts in my Salesforce contacts object. And so I look up my vendors and I want to call the contacts associated with those vendors. So that's the example that we're doing here. But you might run into things like having a properties object and the properties all have a contact associated with that property. And so you want to look up a specific list of properties and then call the contacts associated with those properties. So how do we do this? First thing I want to point out is if you go to PhoneBurner, you're probably already here watching this video from here. But in PhoneBurner, you can go to the Salesforce training and go down to the Manage Package section. Here you'll be able to access our documentation on how to do this. Now I'm obviously going to walk you through it, but I do want to point out that this documentation is here to help guide you through. So you can print this off or just have it up on another screen. So the first thing we're going to do, let's jump back over to Salesforce, is we're going to go to Setup. So we're going to click on there, the little gear, go to Setup. And the first thing we need to do in Setup is we need to create a Visualforce page. From here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new Visualforce page. Now, of course, you can name this whatever you want, but I typically recommend that when you're creating these Visualforce pages that you start it off with the custom object name and then end it with contact dialer start, because we're specifically calling the contact records when we're starting that dial session. But once again, you can name it whatever you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that. Of course, this is my vendor contact dialer start. And then of course the name will be the same. Label and name will be the same. If you put spaces in there, there's going to be underscores. Then I'm going to go down here to the actual code and I'm going to select all of that and delete it. Now I'm going to go back to the documentation and I'm going to jump down to the bottom here and you're going to see this code here. I'm going to go ahead and select all of this. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it here in this box. So when I do that, that's going to give me the code to create the Visualforce page. But of course, we can't anticipate what object you're going to try to link this to and how you're linking to the contact records on the contact object. So there are 4 things that you need to update in this code. The first one is in line number 1. Right here you'll see where it says insert custom object API name. So we need to get the API name of the object that we're going to be adding this option to. So let's once again, I'm going to just open up another tab here so I can easily bounce back and forth. I'm going to go to the object manager and I'm specifically trying to do this on the vendor object. Now this object is actually part of the managed package you get with PhoneBurner. So we've already done a lot of this stuff for you, but I want to walk you through how to create this. So we're going to go ahead and grab that API name. I'm going to copy that, go to our Visualforce page, and I'm going to paste that between the quotes. So it should just be the quotes API name, right? Then we're going to go down to this next line here, and we're going to set a variable. Here you can see it says insert custom object API name and replace the underscore C with an S. So we're going to highlight everything between the quotes and we're going to paste our API name for the object, but we're going to delete the underscore C and replace it with an S. Now the next 2 items that we need to update are down here. We've got this line and this line, and we need to get the API name for the field that is linking back. It's the lookup field for the contact record that we're going to be calling. So let's go back to our object manager. Let's open up the vendor object, and we're going to go to fields and relationships. And here we're going to find whatever field on this object that is a lookup field back to the contact for the contact that we would want to call when we identify the records that we want to call, right? So if we go back to our list here, if I find a vendor named Buddy, I want to call this specific contact. So that's the contact field on this object that I want to actually call. That's the record I want to call. So going back here to, here, I'm going to copy this field name, the API name, and I'm going to paste that into the code here. So it should look just like that. And now I can save this. So now that I've created this Visualforce page, if I go back to Visualforce pages, I should see this new page listed here. What was it called? Vendor Contact Dialer Start. So the first thing I want to remember to do after I create that is I want to go into the security settings and make sure that all of the specific profiles that need to have access to this page do in fact have access to it. In this case, I'm just going to add all of them. You can obviously be more selective on your end. But keep in mind, if you forget to add a profile there, when somebody with that profile goes to start a dial session, they're not actually going to be able to do that. So keep that in mind. So now that I've created the Visualforce page and I've updated the security, I now need to add the button to that list view, to my list view. So I'm going to go back to the object, the vendor object, and I'm going to go down to buttons, links, and actions. From here, I'm going to create a new button. Now I can name this button anything I want. You'll see that if I scroll back up into the documentation here, let's go down to new button, right? You can see we typically call it Begin Contact PhoneBurner Session. Now I'm building this on an object that's part of the PhoneBurner Manage package, so I'm actually going to name this slightly different. I'm just going to call it Contact PhoneBurner Session. So I'm going to come back over here in Label. I'm going to paste that in there, and I'm going to name it. Now you'll see that the only difference between the label and the name is there's underscores in the spaces there. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to set this to List Button. The display type. For behavior, I'm going to go ahead and choose Display in Existing Window Without Sidebar or Header. For content source, I'm going to choose Visualforce page. So we're going to reference to the Visualforce page that we just created. That's our Vendor Context Dialer Start. Here you'll see the other Visualforce pages that are just part of this Manage package, but we want to use the one that I just created. And we're going to go ahead and save that. Now, once we've created that button, we now need to add it to our search layouts, which is what that little pop-up was all about. So let's go to Search Layouts, go to our default layout, edit that. You're going to see the Contact PhoneBurner Session button. That's the one that we just created. I'm going to go ahead and add that and save. Then I'm going to go down here to this List View button layout. And I'm going to go ahead and edit this layout. I'm going to add the Contact PhoneBurner Session button, and I'm going to save it. Once I've saved it in both of those options, now if I go back to my vendor's object and I refresh that page, you'll see my new button is now listed here. So I can select my records, and launch a dial session. Now keep in mind, I'm not calling the vendor records, I'm calling the contact records that are related to those vendors, those that are linked as part of that lookup field. So let's go ahead and jump into a dial session just so that you can see what that looks like. So I'll hit start dialing and I'm going to pause dialing. Let's go back here. All right, so now you can see the vendors and the contacts, right? So let's go back here. See if I can get all of this stuff on the screen at the same time. So as you can see, even though I selected Buddy, Clark, and Clint vendors to call, I'm actually calling, in this case, Andrew the Drew sample. That's the record I'm actually calling when I start that dial session. All right, so that's how easy it is for you to add the option to launch a dial session to a custom object that's part of a managed package where you want to call contacts related to the records in that custom object. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this video, and happy dialing.